left, but just a great principle that doesn't have any ideology, any party attached to it. And you do get a lot of people who start to see the light, quote unquote, that I say, and say, you know what, you're absolutely correct. And now tell me more about conservative principles. I'm a conservative principle. A conservative on real principles. You know, I don't stick myself with the party with it. I say, well, here's the conservative principles before World War II and how conservatism came.
Aja, I consider you a constitutional conservative, if I may.
Thank you. I was going to say that because somebody said you're a constitutional conservative.
I knew that's what you were trying to say, and you are a constitutional
libertarian. Yeah,
I'm sorry?
I do, but you know, and I do lean libertarian. I have my disagreements with the libertarians on some issues, but I have great libertarian friends who I was going to say that I can agree and disagree with them. But yeah, I'm more of a constitutional conservative because you have to really not only looking at the Constitution, but you have to read the background of the Constitution with the Federalist and the Anti-Federalist papers and the background of all the framers to understand the Constitution. You cannot just say, well, I'm first and pro-Second Amendment. Okay, let's look at why those got framed the way they did. But thank you for saying that. I'm going to start saying that more. Yes, I am a constitutional conservative. And so when it comes to liberty, I will fight for everybody's freedom and liberty. I don't care if I disagree with you, but you have the right to say what you want. Now, if it's, you know, there's certain places in it, but if you want to go have a protest. But, you know, you have your right to do that. Everybody has the right to bear arms. Everybody has the right for freedom of religion. Everybody has the right to be who they are when it comes to, you know, I'm going to fight for you as an individual. And I know a lot of people have a hard time with that, but you have to look at it as the framework that the Constitution was meant for all, not a political party, not a certain gender, not a certain race. I mean, yes, we can get into that later when it comes to the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment, but later on we got those rights, you know, after slavery and even the 1964 Civil Rights Act, and we still have a lot to go on. But the Constitution was framed for everybody to come here to enjoy the freedom. And that's where I see the progressive left is taking away those freedoms, but also some on the right. And I explained to the ones on the right, I said, the Constitution is not based on you only or how you feel. It's based for everybody. So you have to start looking at it outside in versus I believe this way because I live this way, but you also have to respect what everybody else lives too. You know, I live in California, so my viewpoint is different versus somebody who lives in Utah or in Idaho. And I've met some great people on Twitter where they said, you really opened our eyes up on how the rest of America is, because there's this one guy, great supporter of mine. His name is Mark, and he's on Twitter, and him and I had some great conversations. And he said, you really changed my perspective on the rest of America based on your tweets and a couple of my friends' tweets. And he's a Republican, and he said, now I get what you guys are saying. Because he told me, I live in a small town, this is how I lived, and this is how I viewed everybody who lived. And I said, no, you need to go to New York, you need to go to Miami, you need to go to Baltimore and Chicago if you want to, and come to California. It's totally different. And this is where I tell people, too, you need to travel. I know everybody wants to travel out the country, but you need to travel in the country and see how other people live. I mean, even in California, Northern California is different than Southern California. We have our own language, our own lingo, our own way of doing things versus Northern California. And that's the beauty of this country. It's like moving around and you just see all this diversity and how people live and think and eat and celebrate. But at the end of the day, we can still preserve our Constitution, liberty, rights. And that's the thing that we need to start fighting for.
Amen. 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 You know, as I'm listening to you and we're talking about what's going on throughout the country, On the heels of Black History Month, President Biden made one of the most racist remarks, and I put it in my blog, and I'm going to talk about it for a minute, that anyone could have made. And I'm going to read, because it's very, very important. My blog.
What did he say now? I'm starting to ignore him.
Nominating a person, this is my last, let me go back. Excuse me, everyone. Let me go back, because I did 2 blogs, and this is really actually one of the first blogs that I've written as a result, versus sharing information to raise the level of consciousness of other people. I was so taken back by Biden's comment last Thursday. This time I had to write, and I'm just waiting for my blog to open up so I can share with you, because people take these comments for granted, but I was totally offended, as well as all Americans should be offended. It's trying to come up now. Just give me 1 second. And this is exactly what you're talking about, where, if we see a wrong, we have a responsibility to push back and call out what it is, okay? Because if not, then,
even if it's on your own side, you have a responsibility.
Amen. Exactly. Especially if it's on our own side. We have a responsibility. My computer would be running slow now when I wanted to.
That's okay.
Okay.
Technology.
Okay, here we I hate it. I didn't grow up with it, but it's a necessary evil. The title that I put this is the title that I put for my blog post, Biden vows to nominate Black woman to high court undermines Martin Luther King Jr. And I thank you, Aja, for allowing me to enter this into your show today. On January 27th, on the heels of Black History Month, President Biden vows to nominate a person of color and gender to the highest court. Following through on a presidential campaign promise, President Joe Biden pledged to nominate a Black woman to the Supreme Court after Justice Stephen Breyer formally announced his retirement Thursday. This is his quote: "Our process is going to be rigorous. I will select a nominee worthy of Justice Breyer's legacy of excellence and decency," Biden said, calling the selection of the Supreme Court justice one of the president's most serious constitutional responsibilities. Quote, "While having been studying candidates' background and writings, I've made no decision except one. The person I nominate will be someone with extraordinary qualifications, character, experience, and integrity. And that person will be the first Black woman ever nominated to the United States Supreme Court. It's long overdue in my view," Biden said. President Biden remarks, this is my comment now, President Biden remarks undermines Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s dream of a society where people are not judged by color. This is blatant racism and bias at the highest level. I believe a president of the United States of America should appoint the most qualified constitutionalist person to the bench. Quote, unquote, Martin Luther King, "I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character." This is me continuing my writing of my blog. The Democratic Party and the progressive left continues to engage in identity politics to fuel the flames of hate and racism. Their goal is to keep those emotionally charged by their rhetoric oppressed and dependent on them while making promises they fail to deliver on. All we need to do is look at every major city in the nation for the last 60 years run by Democrats. These cities have high crime, taxes, poor schools, crumbling infrastructure, drugs, homelessness, mental health issues, and political corruption. I believe that most Americans are colorblind and would like to see the most qualified candidate nominated to the high court, regardless of color or gender. If we are to move forward as a nation, we must denounce and stamp out any form of discrimination at the sight of it. Thank you for allowing me to share my blog post into your show, Aja.
I wish I could write. Somebody somebody said, you need to start writing. I said, I actually do better talking. So I'm going to work on my writing. I do plan in the future, within the next couple of months, to have my own podcast and blog posts to talk about these issues. But this is what I tell people. And you're my first podcast to openly say this. There's bigotry and racism on both sides, and I've seen it.
Mm-hmm.
It's on both sides. And one side will do one thing to trigger the other side to up and empty, well, I gotcha. And they use the black community mainly, which I don't like. And both sides do it. They will say, okay, well, Biden said this, well, we're going to say this. And I tell people to really pay attention in how this checkers game works, where they use one community that has a very long history in this country. Like you said, today's the first kickoff of Black History Month, and hopefully I'll be getting deeper in my posts and tweets and maybe even do something later on this month for a podcast. But I tell people to really pay attention in how both sides uses one community to up and ante the gotchas. And I have to say that, and I do that with both sides. We know how the left is. We know how the progressives are. They will find something to trigger the right to have them start talking about it and to rile them up for talking points on mainstream media. But you have to learn that checkers game. You have to really learn that checkers game to see if this is really how we're going to be going in politics, by using this one single community, the black community, the Black American community, however you want to identify yourself as, being a Black American. And I've seen this for a very long time. I've seen this since I was a teenager. And so what my goal is this year is to have people understand that that's a checkers game, that's a infighting, I call it the Hatfield and McCoy's game, but to focus on the bigger issues and the bigger things that are going behind the scenes. Because if they're distracting us with this, what's really going on that are huge, it could be with more mandates, it could be the Ukrainian and Russian crisis, it could be where China is about to invade Taiwan, but we're so focused on, which we should focus on, what are you trying to distract us from? And that goes back to CIA operations, that goes back to KGB tactics, that goes back to many other things. It's called Operation Mockingbird, which is a great book. And you need to ask yourself, are they trying to divide us or unite us? And that's on both sides. And that's where a lot of my social network friends, we're trying to get people to focus on the underlying issues when it comes to the stuff that's going on with local government issues, what's going on with school choice issues, what's going on when it comes to our liberties and freedom, because at the end of the day, your average American person, your average American is so tired of hearing this. All they're trying to do is put food on their table for their families and try not to stop sitting in traffic and just trying to work where they say we don't have time, but we want to just live freely and to live prosperously and to not be bogged down with the left and the right. But what are you going to do for me as a middle class in a poor in a poor town or a struggling city, and I'm living paycheck to paycheck? So you have to start asking yourself, is this why do we keep ping-ponging this back and forth? And I try to stay out of this type of arguments until I say I can't stay quiet anymore. But what are they distracting you from by doing this on both sides? Where, I'm very big on foreign policy because that's my background, and intelligence and everything else, and anti-terrorism, where I have to go find another news source to see, okay, did Russia invaded Ukraine yet? Are we going to send troops over there? Are we going to go through another war? Is World War III going to pop off? And even as China, are they going to take over Taiwan, which will affect us so greatly here, and especially when dealing with the Keystone, with the pipeline that Russia's trying to do across the former USSR, across Russia.